In the last few days, we've been treated with scenes from China where our President John Dramani Mahama is in China. And as you see there in your shot, arriving with the Chinese president is in Beijing. And they are talking about deals. But we need to learn from our history. And that is why that handshake is important. A few deals have been made. But we need to pause. Anytime Ghana travels to China, such as this, we've seen Nana Addo do it. We've seen, may he so rest in perfect peace, John Atta Mills himself also did it sometime in 2010, where the CBD loan became a big deal. And then we saw the past administration led by the former president himself, and then Dr. Bawumia himself also went there and also signed a deal. There was a lot of fanfare about it. But then you look back on that and you fast forward many years down the line after these visits and you ask yourself, so what really was achieved? In the two instances cited, they all ended in some significant controversy back home in terms of, so what did we get out of this? The promises that were made to us, were they delivered? And each time this happens, there has been some fallout that we need to then look back on in the context of this latest meeting to then ask ourselves whether lessons have been learned, but also, most importantly, what are we getting out of this deal and who really stands to benefit? That is the purpose of this conversation because, as you know, the government is embarking on a reset, which means things will not be done the same way it was done, or business as usual. So how is Ghana approaching this latest state visit to Beijing differently to get a different deal that benefits Ghana, but also benefits China, but doesn't leave us at a disadvantage? That's why this conversation is important. Can Ghana finally win the China game? China is playing a game, but can we play them at this game that even the US is finding difficult to deal with? A few things that we already know, as far as the deal is concerned. This big announcement was one that we heard a few days back. In fact, this week, the president himself talked about it, zero tariff agreement that to be signed at the end of October. This is good for one thing. One, because it will open the Chinese market. It's a huge market, more than 1 billion people there. Two, the Ghanaian exporters, the Ghanaian products that we make here that we export. But the reverse is also true, and that is where the question, the risk is, because China is overproducing almost everything. They are outperforming every economy in the world when it comes to share production and exporting locally produced stuff in China. And they are dumping a lot of stuff in African countries. Even in Europe, they've had to deal with China's tendency to just dump its goods because they are overproducing. They have overcapacity in many, many areas. And so then when you do zero tariff and it's reciprocal, you, yes, can send stuff there, but we're not a country that is big on industrialization and local production. And so we would definitely have challenges there when China decides to bring their goods the other way, taking advantage of the zero tariff agreement. And so we need to find a way within this agreement to still benefit. How do we do that when you have a zero tariff agreement with a country as huge as China that is already exporting a lot into a territory and causing challenges for our local manufacturers? And this is just the picture that I was just talking about. Ghana is the number one, as far as China's role in Ghana's economy is concerned. Ghana is number one import market for Chinese goods. And then when it comes to the other way, fourth largest export destination. So we are importing far more than we're exporting to them. And that's the point I'm making. And it tells you almost everything that we have locally. If you look at the data here, we bring in from China. Everybody goes to China to bring stuff into Ghana. Now Chinese vehicles are coming in, the EV vehicles, just drive around the country. It's a good thing because it's good for the environment. But in essence, Europe is putting in place policies to control that because they want to protect the local market. And these are big conversations that we must be having. What is our China policy? Is a key question we'll ask tonight. So that when we move to China, we know what we are doing. And so this is not ad hoc. We're just not going there for a deal that then will hurt us. But we have a clear strategy. We have a clear China strategy, clearly defined targets and outcomes that then would tell us, in essence, for example, you could say in outcome, in the next 5 years after this, on the back of this, we want to increase our export to China by setting quantum and get the X return from it. We need to have that clearly into policy. And then you then decide, how do you get to that particular goal? Do we have that? We'll try and get that question answered tonight when we sit for a conversation. Then you look at the Ghana 2024 export to China. 7% of everything else that we exported went to China. But this, again, pales in comparison to what is coming the other way from China to us. And then you look at the overall picture of where else we're exporting to. We're exporting far more to the United Arab Emirates, and there's a lot of our oil is going there, Switzerland and South Africa, and then China is fourth. So in this grand scheme of things, in terms of exporting, which is really what we want to be doing as a country, China isn't in the top three, is in fourth position. But of course, China is a market that you still want to have access to and unlock. So maybe this zero tariff deal will unlock that and increase this way up, because then it becomes cheaper to export there. But you always have to think about what is coming the other way around. And that is how we begin to analyze the net effect of the zero tariff arrangement that we've done. And you see the conversation that I've been talking about. If you draw it on the graph, the trend of Ghana's exports to China, yes, has been growing. Can it grow even faster on the back of this arrangement that we have? Now, I found this interesting because everything else that we export to China, commodities, and in raw form, and we've been having this conversation about the global economy for a long time. China is gobbling up oil, and so it's good for us, but can we refine a bit of that? Cocoa is going in this raw form to China. China is processing and producing chocolate with it and selling it. That is a conversation, again, that we must have. If you have a China policy, you then define what you do with this and reverse the trend of just exporting commodities and rather go to exporting refined products. And so we need to ask the question whether our leaders have thought about this, and this is something that we're doing as part of the conversations we are having with our Chinese counterparts. I pull this up, and this is what our exports to the US under AGOA. This is important because, and this is possibly why the Ghanaian government is taking this approach. The US market is now shut to us because AGOA allowed us to export stuff to the US duty-free, quota-free. But in its absence, it's going to become a bit more expensive to do it. So you have to find alternative markets. It then makes sense that China is a huge market, bigger in terms of the share population than the United States of America. So make friends there. And then what you can't send now to US because it's more expensive, you then find a market in China where you take it to. So there's an alternative market that we need to explore. And that is why possibly we are taking advantage of this deal with China to divert what used to go to the US because of this whole issue with the scrapping of AGOA, and then take it to China instead. And you possibly would have noticed that the Foreign Affairs Minister has said that we are negotiating with the US to try and get this AGOA thing sorted to give us some preferential treatment there. But while we do that, you need to also explore the Chinese alternative, which is what we're doing. So there's a smart move there. Don't put all your eggs in one basket. Don't hope that because you're taking in deportees from the US, they will give you that reprieve. Go to China and see what China can also give you. So you can have multiple markets for your local manufacturers who can then export. So there's some reason there for doing this. The question we need to always ask, and I've asked at the beginning, which we will explore, is does this fit into a bigger strategy? And what are the outcomes that we are seeking, say, in the next 5-10 years from these deals? Because our past have shown us that when we've done deals with China, sometimes we are left limping at the end. I don't know if you remember, there are a few lessons there for us to look at. And if you look at the Ghana-China debt restructuring, China gave us a tough time. It took us 2 years to try and restructure it. When everybody else in the Paris Club was saying, oh, it's okay, we can find an arrangement for you, China says, no way. It was far more difficult to convince China to sort of restructure. They said the best they can do for us is to just give us a longer tenor of payment, but in terms of giving us, allowing us to do haircuts, they're not going to tolerate it at all. China is not in the business of being a Father Christmas, and they've shown that across the continent. I will show you other countries where this has happened. But I remember this story too very well. This is under Mills' tenure. In 2010, we went in for a 3 billion CDB loan. And if you were a journalist and you've been in this country and watched the economy and politics for a while, it was the biggest controversy at the time, because the money was stuck. It wasn't coming. There was a lot of controversy about it. There was a lot of celebration when this deal was signed. Same, we sent a delegation to China, it was signed, they came back, they told us that their infrastructure, 12 infrastructure projects was going to be rolled out across the country. And then when it came to releasing the funds, it became a challenge. And it was backed by oil because at the time, a year before 2011, we had begun commercial production of oil. We're using that as a basis for that particular huge amount coming in. That was controversial. And the money didn't come as we had expected it to come. That is the first lesson. The second lesson was just under Kufado. Same, 2 billion, Sino-Hydro. The road I travel on every day, the Adenta Dodowa, was one of those earmarked to be completed with the Sino-Hydro deal. It didn't happen. I remember doing a documentary about it and asking the Vice President's office, because they led it, and they said, well, a lot of challenges then cropped up. Again, they said it was a barter arrangement and not a loan. That became very controversial in the end. Again, it didn't materialize exactly as the government thought it would. And yes, some roads were built, one in particular, the interchange in Tamale. The rest never materialized. Again, China at the heart of that. So be careful what China promises you is a lesson here. And we need to ask the question tonight on the back of the visit and all the deals you're making, that have we learned this lesson, and how do we apply those lessons to ensure that this time we can win this China game? Because as you see in other countries, Zambia, Angola, Kenya, Uganda, the challenge with China is very clear. They don't mess around. They will do a deal with you, but they are looking at their interests ultimately. What is the Ghanaian interest in here? My guest will help us unpack this when we return. And thanks for staying with us here on PM Express. Let's have this big conversation about China, because our president is in China to do a deal. He's done one already. We're expecting more to be announced. And the big question, obviously, is how do we ensure that this is mutually beneficial in the long term? Also, because of our recent history, I've cited a few examples for you. How do we ensure that this is different from what we've seen before? Stay with us as we unpack that for you. PMS is always brought to you by Syntex Tanks. It is strong, it is tough. It's also brought to you by Academic Times. It's also brought to you by Pepsi and Cavity Fighter toothpaste. Tonight, if you're looking for a durable water storage tank, look for Syntex Tanks, the one with the tortoise on it. It is simple. If your tank doesn't have the tortoise on it, then it is not the correct tank. Syntex Tanks, it is strong, it is tough. Also tonight, look out for the Academic Times journal when it launches, because that will make sure that the academic papers that are gathering dust on the shelves become visible, and hopefully it gets attention required that can be transformed into solutions. We have a lot of challenges, and there are a lot of research out there that have the solutions to them, but there isn't a medium to communicate them, and that journal seeks to do that. So look out for it. Also tonight, every time we eat food, sugars get trapped in our teeth, and that obviously produces a few challenges. It could lead to tooth decay, gum disease, and in some cases foul breath. And that's why you need to look for the Pepsi and Cavity Fighter tonight for your teeth before you sleep. My guest joining me tonight for a conversation, Mark Bedu-Abuaje is the CEO of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. He joins me in the studio. Seth Chuma Kwabwa is the CEO of the Association of Ghana Industries. Professor Godfrey Bokwe is an economist and professor of finance at the University of Ghana Business School. And Frederick Emerson is a technical advisor to the finance minister. And I'm delighted that he and all of my guests could join me as we explore this. And let me start with you, Prof. When you look at the trip to China, I wonder what your reflections are on what this could mean for us long term. From the president and his team, they need to do a deal. One deal has been announced already, a deal to have zero tariffs as far as trade is concerned. But there's a bigger picture there, opening a new market for us. Long-term goal, obviously, to help the Ghanaian economy. Is that the way you see it?
Hey, good evening, Prof.
The most appropriate way to look at this is to look at it from the perspective of China, rather than looking at it from the perspective of Ghana or Africa.
Okay, we'll fix your microphone pretty shortly, and I'll return to you on this. I want to bring in the technical advisor, the finance minister, who's joining us via Zoom. I'm grateful, Frederick, that you join us. I guess it would be appropriate, if you may, to state the objectives for this visit to China? What are we looking for there? What is in it for us? What are the strategic objectives?
Sorry. Okay, can you hear me?
Loud and clear.
Sure. Let me give a bit of background to this whole deal. As we may be aware, we have what we call the Forum for China and Africa Cooperation, Forum for China Africa Cooperation. And during last year's FOCAC, President Xi Jinping announced that he's going to give zero tariff to all African countries for African countries to export to the Chinese market tariff-free, as in duty-free. Now, the first level of that particular promise has actually been extended, and China has extended zero tariff, the imports, all imports from what we call the LDCs, least developed countries, all have been zeroed. There are no tariffs on it. But now, you may also know that China is a developing country, and Ghana is a developing country. I mean, there are just about 23 countries who qualified as least developed countries in Africa. So when, according to the WTO rules, when a developed country wants to offer something to developing countries, there shouldn't be any reciprocity. So China can unilaterally, as a developing country, offer free tariff treatment of imports from LDCs. But when it comes to developing countries, since we are all developing countries, China is a developing country, Ghana is also a developing country, and other African countries are developing countries, there has to be some form of reciprocity in that if China offers something, in order not to breach the WTO rules, we, Ghana, also have to offer something, or that developing country also has to offer something. So it is in the spirit of that, I mean, this was actually initiated by President Mahama, who saw the opportunity and realized that Ghana can take advantage of what China is offering. But the reciprocity we're talking about here is not something that China expects one-to-one reciprocity. The negotiations we've had with Chinese, they are only looking at sort of a token offer from us, so as to fulfill all righteousness or the rules of the game according to the WTO rules. So initially, I mean, right from the start, China has about 8,000 tariff lines of goods that Ghana can potentially export to or already export to. And already, immediately, they're going to zero some of them. The initial arrangement was that they're going to take their time because they're also worried about some of the imports that we will send to China. I mean, equally, I mean, we are also worried some of the things they will bring to Ghana. They are also worried, even though they want to offer us that that sort of tariff-free. They also wanted to calibrate it in such a way that some of them would take effect in 2 years, some in 5 years, some in 10 years.
So under this arrangement, they've specified which goods will be structured under this arrangement. Which goods we can export and they can also export to us.
So I was coming to that. So for our imports, China gave us the opportunity to offer them something. I mean, they had ideas what goods they wanted us to have. They wanted us to zero tariffs on, but we also made a counter proposal. And as we speak, I can tell you on authority that we have less than 150 products that we have offered to zero tariffs on. Let me even.
So you mean 150 products that China can bring into Ghana?
150 products. Let me. I mean, it's not. So 119 plus 14 is just 140 something. So let me explain. There are 114 items that Ghana already gives to all other. I mean, countries can bring it to Ghana tariff-free. Already 119 products. So if you are bringing those products to Ghana, you don't pay tariff already. So those were items you could also offer to China because we offer it to any other country. But then there are also 14 line items that areas that we are looking to increase production. So, and those are basically agricultural products. So we are talking about machinery for poultry production, machinery for irrigation, machinery for the basic agriculture, basic labor-intensive agriculture. It was only these 14 products that we have tariff lines, some as low as 2%, some 5%, that we offered some rebates. Even that one, we didn't offer 100% rebates. We offered some rebates, some we reduced by 0.5%, some we reduced by 1 percentage point and the like. Because the idea here is that Ghana must offer something. Ghana must offer something. So the concern that is gonna be like the trump card or open the way or the floodgates for Chinese imports to come here and come and distort our local production and that kind of like, it is legitimate concern. But trust me, a lot has been done to prevent that.
And
that is not going to happen.
And if you look at from the China's point of view, what products are they allowing us to export to them under this arrangement?
Virtually every product that we export to them and every product we can potentially export to them. Okay. We have a tall list of products that is over 8,000 product lines.
Okay.
But like I said, so far as we are concerned about our imports, they were also concerned. For example, they are developing local capacity for certain manufacturing. So they thought that we had competitive advantage. So they didn't want to open up immediately. But after negotiation, we told them that, oh, you cannot, if you really mean this, and if you really want to give effect to what President Xi Jinping said, you should give it to us immediately. And they agreed.
Okay.
So
stay with me on that. I think you've laid out the structure here on that first bit of the tariff. I want to bring the Chamber of Commerce in because they do this. I was coming to you, but now that he's laid out the issues that directly bothers on where he survives and puts food on his table, I need to ask him that. You've heard him. The concern was China is the world's monster when it comes to manufacturing. So when a small country like Ghana, where we don't manufacture a lot, enters into a zero tariff arrangement with China, you are opening yourself up to be killed. But he says, well, we know that. We acknowledge that there is definitely going to be some challenge, that we are doing everything else to limit it. So we're limiting it to 100 and just over 100 products. What would you say to the assurances?
Well, I think it's a genuine concern for us to express, given the fact that in terms of manufacture, China is way ahead of us in terms of their competitiveness. Some of these issues are somehow in secrecy. We would have expected that in the course of the negotiation, they get in touch with institutions like Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry for us to also make input into some of these negotiations. The only time you got to know is about 2 weeks ago when there was a discussion on rules of origin. And we issue certificate of origin. That's when they got in touch with us. The actual details of...
And what were you told at the time?
I think they said the team is, Attorney General and some teams, they are working on the actual agreement, but they needed information on rules of origin. That's the only time they contacted us. But the rules of origin is just a small part of international trade. So we will provide information. Even at that point, we expressed concern about this agreement, that we as businesses will have to know what is in it. We have to know so that we can prepare for any eventualities. If it's going to be beneficial to us, it's the businesses that are going to benefit, because the government obviously will not export any manufactured products. It's the business that are going to manufacture and export. If you look at our export as a country, 80% of our total export is coming from 3 key products: cocoa, crude oil, and gold. Yeah. That is where government may have control. But when it comes to the manufacturing sector, it is the private sector. Now, we have opened our economy. they have also opened their economy. China is a big market, and obviously, if you have such a market and you have a diversified product, then you can benefit from that market. In fact, the major beneficiaries of trade are those who add value. In Ghana, what value do we add to the product? All the things we have been exporting to China are all in their raw form. And then they will rather add value. Cocoa, we export either semi-processed, they add value, and then we go and import, and even at a higher price. So there is no way, when it comes to the manufacturers, we'll be able to compete with China. In fact, our cost of production here no way matches out with that of China. The electricity alone, Ghana, electricity per kilowatt hour for a manufacturing company is over 10 cents. In China, it's less than 5 cents. Yeah. Labor, they have it. They have the raw materials. So right from start, if you want to compete with them, they are out. He has given us information. For me, it's very important. And I expect that this information should have given to us much earlier, so that we'll be able to inform our members and also prepare ourselves for such a trade deal. I am a bit worried.
What's the concern exactly? What the concern is that you will not be able to take full advantage of this, or that China is going to flood our markets with products that will compete with what you're producing here?
Exactly. In fact, if China decide to, I was looking at an article, and the question was, what do we export as a country to China?
Yeah, and let me answer that question. So the top 5 things we export to China: crude oil. 77% of our crude oil goes to China.
Yes.
Ores.
Yes.
Cocoa, copper and plastic, fruits. None of that is manufactured.
Yes, these are raw, unprocessed things that we export. And the article asked the reverse question: what do Ghana import from China? And he said everything.
Everything, yes.
So we import almost everything, and none of the things that we import from China do we have competitive advantage over them. Because they have
importing everything.
Yes.
What is this agreement going to do?
Exactly. Over the years, have built their manufacturing sector purposely for them to be able to. I was discussing with Prof about how they even fix their exchange rate to be able to sell their product to the international market. So even with their exchange rate, everything they are doing is about export. So whatever economic decision they take, they are looking at export. Look at what you are doing with our exchange rate.
Yeah, and Ghana is number 1 import partner is China.
It's China. Yeah. And look at the billions.
So almost everything we import comes from China.
Everything. So on the face of it, in fact, if you look at the AGUA, it's duty-free, quota-free. Ask yourself, how have you been able to take advantage of AGUA?
Because if you're not producing
because
enough
you don't have anything. The things that we are exporting, even if they don't give us this free market, we'll still be exporting because they need our raw materials.
But there's a point there, isn't there? Because once that the AGUA is no longer available, you need alternative markets.
Yes.
So take that to China.
Yes.
Isn't that a strong point?
No, obviously, because looking at the fact that, US are imposing tariffs, all other economic blocs and countries are looking for alternatives. So you look at it, but if you are developing such a trade agreement, I think that you should also look at your ability to also trade, your competitiveness. In fact, in such agreement, there are all, I don't know whether you have in this, a developmental fund component of it. And usually they use this to attract countries like Africa. That, you lose revenue because of the duty free. We know you are not doing well, so we will give you this developmental fund. One, to be able to either develop your manufacturing sector. Most cases, when we get the money, we don't use it for its intended purpose. I don't know what is in this agreement.
As in to build local capacity.
To build local capacity. I don't know what is in this agreement because I haven't seen it. So if there is, then we need to come back and look at how we take advantage of this.
Let me bring you your colleague with the Association of Ghana Industries. Seth, I don't know if you have evaluated this agreement yet, as in how this will affect you and your members. You produce locally, but you also produce to export. Isn't this good news for you?
Well, thank you, Evans. Unfortunately, I've not had the opportunity of doing thorough evaluation of this agreement because information is quite scanty on this. We only heard of it as a good news that China is giving us zero-rated access to their market. We didn't hear the other side of it. In fact, for the first time, I'm hearing from Frederick that there's actually a reciprocity here. So there are certain products that we would also allow China to bring duty-free into our country. So I've not had opportunity to do a thorough analysis. And for me, that is very important because, as they say, the sweetness of the pudding is in the eating. As at now, the information is quite scanty. We'll have to see which products are affected. In the case of Ghana, Frederick mentioned that over 8,000 products, virtually all products can be exported there duty-free. That is fine. It means there's no quota arrangement. Even here, you cannot even say there's no quota. It's only mentioning products that can be exported. Is there a quota? If you are doing certain high volumes, would you still be allowed to export? That's one question that we don't have answers to. The other thing is what we are also offering. If what we are offering, he mentioned that out of the 140 something, 119 or so is already free to all other countries. If that is the case, that's fine. But even if it is 10 that they are allowed to bring in free of charge, we need to know those products. The extent to which those products can compete with our members, we need to look at it because it could be strategic products. And in international trade, just as you mentioned, for the export market, about 80% of our export revenue to China is coming from just 3 products. So the fact that you have a large number of products you are talking about, there could be some strategic products. It could be 5, it could be 10. That should not be included in such an arrangement. Unfortunately, we don't have that information. So for me, until we get detailed information as to the specific products that we are allowing them to bring duty-free, it will be very difficult to assess. The other side of it is the fact that they are opening their doors for you does not necessarily mean you can take advantage of it.
Okay, let me ask you that question because that is a very important point you've made. Looking at your membership and what we do, are we in a position to take advantage? Because he says there's no limitation on what we can export. Are we in a position to take advantage of that in a meaningful way to improve the economy, but also improve the lot of your businesses?
At the moment, it's very difficult to say we are in a position to do so. However, market develops, businesses grow, and take advantage of market opportunities. So when you create a market opportunity, people will like to take advantage of it by expanding and all that. So once the opportunity is opened, we should be able to look at it. But there are so many factors you have to take into account. The fact that you have your duty removed does not necessarily make you competitive because you need to produce to scale. You need to produce at a certain cost that would enable you to sell at a certain price. It is possible that, and that's as we are experiencing with the products from China, even if sometimes you impose 20% duty, they are still competitive than you because they produce in a low-cost environment. And then also they produce in large volume, so the cost per unit is spread, and therefore cost per unit is very low. So even when you have imposed 20%, they are still able to compete and outcompete you. In the same way, if they take out the duties and the tariffs, and on the basis of that, you think you can just export, you may not be accurate because you need to look at your total cost of production and compare to the price that you will get there. So generally speaking, if a country says, I'm opening my doors for you, it's generally a good news. But we cannot at this moment start enjoying and being excited about it because we really need to do the analysis. Which product do we have that comparative advantage? Which products do we have that when the duties are removed, we can be competitive in the Chinese market? It's not every product that we are exporting there. And if you look at the exports, the traditional export that is going there. Whereas in the reverse, they are exporting all kinds of products into our markets and we are importing them. So it very much depends. We have to do product by product analysis and then cost analysis for each product and look at the competition. Bear in mind that as it's being opened up for Ghana, it's opened up for other African countries. Other countries are also exporting to China, and the China itself is producing. So it's an interplay of things. When you enter the market, several countries are also going to compete with you.
Yeah,
you having duty-free gives you some advantage, but it does not in any way mean a complete advantage that you can really take advantage of.
And Prof, you started by making a point. China doesn't do anything for free, and we've seen that over the period. No country does. There's always an interest.
Africa.
You are right.
Ghana for that matter.
So for China to by themselves indicate that they're going to have this arrangement with African countries, they would have done their own analysis, done the permutations, and arrived at the conclusion that this is ultimately, they're not for the Christmas. They're not doing this because it's going to benefit Africa. They're doing this definitely because it's going to benefit China. Have we figured out yet what the long-term impact of this is for China as against Ghana? And then where do we plug in? Do you think that we figured this out yet?
I would have given government the benefit of the doubt, but when I heard from the guys on the ground, AGI, Ghana National Chamber, that they haven't been consulted and all of that. In some of these things, they are the guys who are doing the numbers. They are the big players. So you needed to do broad-based consultation to understand the way they also see it and all of that. But to the extent that that hasn't been done, then probably, look, as I said earlier, the best way to understand this is to look at it from the perspective of China. China needed this more. China wants to reduce their exposure to the US market and the rest of them. So they are looking at the diversifying and all of that. And China has been doing this consistently. If you look at the expansion in terms of trade openness, China in relation to the Asia and the rest of them in Africa, you can see China is very strategic. They want to reduce their exposure to the US and they need markets and all of that, even within Europe and all of that. But you see, even before this agreement, Chinese goods are all over this country. Do you want it to get worse? You understand that. So even with some level of tariffs, it's all over the place. But also look at it this way. So if you look at Ghana's performance under the Guided Trade Initiative, we haven't done well. Yeah. Under the African Continental Free Trade, even when it comes to product standards and all of that in terms of its enforcement, is a bit low compared to the international market. We have not been able to take advantage of that. In fact, if you look at Ghana's own competitiveness and the rest of them, we have not. But it looks to me that it has been offered largely and it has to be accepted.
Must we? I think there's a question. Must we? Yes, it's available, but must we take advantage of it? Well,
we don't have an option. We don't have an option because it's also about checking the box. I'm saying we don't have an option because China is quite powerful in terms as a trading partner and also as a development partner and all of that, given what we have seen in the last 20 years with Paris Club creditors and the fact that non-Paris Club creditors have stepped in strongly and all of that.
But they gave us a tough time when we were trying to restructure.
You should understand the philosophy of the Asian countries when it comes to forgiveness of debt. They can forgive sin, but they don't. In addition, they will not do forgiveness of debt. Even look at Japan and the rest of their relationship with Ghana when it came to HIPIC and the rest of them. But there are more issues that we need to look at. That for China, this is working well for them. If you look at it across Africa, China needs Africa more in terms of access to input costs, raw materials.
But that's why I challenge a bit of what you said. You said that we don't have a choice in accepting this. Why don't we have a choice?
What are the options that you have on the table? Have we sat down to develop a strategy? Does Africa have a strategy to engage the rest of the world?
But we have the Continental Free Trade Area.
So, and are you taking advantage of that? Because the point is just like organizing a tournament. It's just like saying that, okay, next World Cup, because Africa has more slots, probably going to win the World Cup. It's a tournament. It depends on how you prepare your players. And the players are the people sitting here.
But Prof, if we haven't taken advantage of the free trade area in Africa, shouldn't our strategy then be that, yes, you've opened this free trade area for us in China, but we want to maximize and take full advantage first of Africa?
This is just an aspect of a bigger picture that China has for Africa. If you will notice that from the beginning of the year, in fact, quite recently, a team of experts from China visited Ghana about certain investable projects that they've identified, I think about 20-something across Africa. And I think in Ghana, they are narrowing down to about 5 of them or so. And all. It's part of a bigger picture and all of that. So I'm saying that it's not like picking and choosing and all of that. But the most important thing for me is to see whether we are laying an economic foundation that allows us to take advantage of many of these things.
Are we?
We are not. And that is where the issue. In fact, if you look at the average weighted interest cost at which Chinese businesses borrow in China, it's less than, it's just around 3%. In Ghana, ask him, we are doing close to 30%. Others are doing 20%, others are doing 27%. Even the Ghana reference rates, with the recent reduction in the policy rate, we are hovering around 17.86%. In China, is less than 3% for some businesses. The distance between Beijing and Shanghai is 1,200 kilometers. A train is doing that in less than 5 hours. The distance between Accra and Kumasi is just around 250 kilometers. It takes people 10 hours, 7 hours. Others don't even arrive and all of that. I mean, if Ivory Coast is talking the way we are talking, if Rwanda and other countries, because if you look at the steps they are putting in place, for which reason some businesses in Ghana today prefer to operate from Ivory Coast rather than setting up here. Somebody can say that, yes, they are putting in place the fundamentals and the rest of them, but we are not. And look at it this way. If you look at our economic orientation, it's not designed to favor exports. Everything we are doing here is largely to make us more import-driven. You look at low exchange rates. You look at inflation on imported items. It's lower than inflation on locally produced. Look at all those fundamentals. Look at your financial system. Your financial system is not designed to enable export. Your financial system is designed to support import. Look at the composition of private sector credit. And if you see the portion that goes to agriculture and manufacturing compared to the portion that goes to service, which essentially funds trade, and there is trade that is receiving that. So the structure of the financial sector itself is to enable import and not production. That's not the only thing. If you can just imagine if a firm is situated in Accra and has to access raw material from, let's say, Cape Coast or Takoradi on this road, how competitive can you get? So there are real structural issues that we need to fix, which will allow us to be able to, even with some level of tariff, we could still be competitive and all of that. But without that, tariff alone doesn't change the game.
Mark, does it reflect a reality?
Of course. You see, if you are trading either a product or service. You are talking about the after. In fact, only few countries produce things that we need in Africa, because we import finished goods and export raw material. You cannot export cassava to any of our countries around. They don't need it. You either use it for fufu or gari. But if you are adding value, that is when the African countries around us will have need for our products. So after in itself is challenged with the product and services that we have, because everything that we have there in their raw form. If you take the case for China, for instance, you're asking whether we can decide not to take it. Look, what are we exporting? If you don't export the cocoa to China, you either export it to other country, because the cocoa will be here.
The cocoa.
Yes, and nothing will happen
That's
to
true.
it.
Yes. If you don't export the crude oil,
you don't export the crude oil.
Go, yeah.
It will be here and nothing will happen to it, because we cannot add value.
And add gold.
And add gold.
All those your blood gold.
These three items. If you say you're angry.
Yes.
I mean, you don't agree with this, whatever it is, you won't export. What are you going to chew the cocoa raw? You have to export. And the value on this raw, unprocessed goods, very, very low. So we don't have an option. In terms of import, we may have option from importing some of these finished goods from other countries. But in terms of competitiveness, as compared to other countries, Chinese products are very competitive in terms of price, low cost of production, cost per unit and other things. So your people would want to import because of the price levels. Because if you're importing any electricals or so from China, now they are of high quality as compared to any other country. Yeah. But in terms of price, you have it at a lower price. And your people looking at their purchasing power will prefer to go in for this low price product. So we are pushed in such a way that we don't have an option, because the goods that we have to export, which is only 3, we have not added value to it. I was talking about the guided trade. You go and look at it, and look at the goods that are being traded among ourselves. the countries that are importing from Ghana, they are not importing your cocoa, they are not importing your gold, they are importing some of the finished product that you have. Go to Burkina Faso. Our pharmaceuticals are going there.
Yeah.
Our rubber-related products are going there. They are the things they need from us. So if African countries are adding value, some of this raw material, we export rubber to China. If you have added value to the raw rubber, in fact, we could have exported it to a lot of the countries around. That is the way we make money. So they structure in such a way that it will be beneficial to them. In fact, if anybody wants to enter into any trade agreement with you, don't think that they love you. From where we sit, we get a lot of countries coming to Ghana trying to do business with us. Their focus is to export their products to Ghana. So they come and they have a product and they're arguing with discussing with you how you can import from them. They are not only few of them are looking at how they can partner with you to manufacture the product. Because when you do that, you are killing their productive sector. You will not be able to create employment for the people there. But we have, resigned ourselves into import. In the long run, I think we've been talking about the structure of economy, import-led.
That's a broken record.
We started doing that long time ago.
That's a broken record.
If 10 years ago, you can call a professor here and you still talk about that.
That's why we don't revise our slides. I'll let you know.
the same.
For the things we said they should do 20 years ago, if they haven't done
So
them.
it's about the product we have to export. I've said earlier that the major beneficiaries of trade are those who are trading with manufactured goods. In fact, the Africans' component of manufactured goods in the global trade is about 2.7% or so. All the things we are exporting in Africa are in their raw form.
Fact,
so we are disadvantaged. Even in 1970, we were exporting more manufactured goods than we are exporting now as a continent. So we are disadvantaged when it comes to how diversified our product is. And I think that we should begin to think and not be so overly excited about some of this agreement. The AGOA and other agreements, they are there. AGOA over 6,000 products. Go and ask whether we've been able to take advantage of that. Botswana and the rest have been able to take advantage.
I'm going to take a break. When I return, I need to ask Sechuma Kwabwado, because the industries we have still manufacture something. How much of that are we exporting to China? And are there any barriers to that trade that this could unlock for them? I want him to help me unpack that, because we must understand that. And then Frederick is still with us. He's had the challenges of both the AGI and the Ghana Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Specifically, how is this arrangement tailored to deal with them? But we also need to ask the question, well, does it fit into a broader strategy? And Prof has made the point that you need to fundamentally change the structure or begin to change it to benefit. So does it fit into a broader strategy? What is our strategy as we begin to engage China, drawing from the lessons of the past? He'll weigh in on that when we return from this break. And thanks for staying with us. My guest tonight discussing the trade deals with China in the back of the president's visit there. Mark Bedu-Abuaji is the CEO of the Ghana National Chamber of Commerce and Industry. Sechuma Kwabwa is the CEO of the Association of Ghana Industries. You have Professor Godfrey Bokwing, is an economist and also a professor of finance at the University of Ghana Business School. And Frederick Amisa is a technical advisor to the finance minister, also joins us. And Seth, I want to come to you next, because we've talked a lot about the fact that a lot of what we export to China, raw materials, commodities, but we certainly must be exporting some items that your members manufacture locally, are we not?
Well, very few, very few. I mean, if you take the fact that over 80% of our exports to China comes from just 3 products, that it tells you that even if you are manufacturing anything and exporting, it's very minimal.
So what items, even among the small, what items are we exporting?
So among the small ones, we have some soaps, some lubricants, some candles, baskets, products. So very small product, but these are all niche products. So it means that they are not in large volumes. They are not being produced to scale. When they are in niche product like that, it means that we are really not earning so much export volumes. So it's something very small you get, and that cannot really turn around the imbalances in trade. So we are producing something, but very minimal, very few people are producing it, and it's only operating in a niche market. On the contrary, what we get from China are very important products that comes in big quantities.
Basically everything.
Yes, in large volumes. So you're talking of the machinery, the vehicles, the electronics, the textiles, consumable products, and so on and so forth. These are products that we consume in bulk, volumes. So you can't even compare. So while they are exporting to us, high value items, we are exporting to them low value items. And the few manufacturing we do is very small quantities. So really, the strategy is not to look at the existing products. If this whole deal will give us the opportunity of creating new products for the Chinese market, that is where we'll benefit. But if you want to look at what we are producing now, there's nothing to write home about. You cannot change the trade balance based on the current manufactured product that we are exporting and say that because now we are removing the tariffs, you can now increase the volumes and change the dynamics. It's not going to change it. So we need to explore the opportunity of creating new products. But that doesn't depend only on the Chinese market. It depends a lot more on our own production capacity. How do we upscale our products and do the volumes that will give us that economies of scale? It also means that our cost of production must come down. And as Mark mentioned, if you are buying electricity over 10 to 12 cents per kilowatt hour, and they are doing it less than 5 cents, obviously you are not competitive. If you are borrowing at 25% when they are borrowing at 3% below, you are not competitive. The raw material that they are producing, they have the entire value chain there. Here, we virtually even import the raw material from China, processed before we export. So already you are at a disadvantage. And therefore, I think what we should be concerning ourselves about is that if we really want to take advantage of this, how do we develop new products? And the new products, we can only develop it if we have a conducive business environment that enables us to produce on large scale and then at competitive prices because our cost will come down. That is where we can then harness the opportunity. Otherwise, we may not really fully benefit from the zero tariffs. I think that at this stage, what we should also be interested in is the non-tariff barriers. It is very important. So the tariffs are there, but the other non-tariff barriers that we need to look at, the logistics to move things there, is more expensive when you sell or you export in smaller quantities. And then the standards, how do we meet? They have their own standards and you must navigate it. For typical small scalers, they have a difficulty navigating these standards. So we need to look at all this in the context of trade, not just the tariffs, but the non-tariff barriers that has to be overcome to position you in a way that you can also do serious business.
Let me put that to Frederick. Frederick, does this arrangement factor in the need to help our local industry create and manufacture new products that we can then export to take advantage of the free trade agreement with China? And then secondly, the non-tariff barriers that both Mark and Seth have talked about.
Quickly, we hear the other guests on the need for engagement, and I must say that these are initial conversations we are having. We are a long shot from having this realized because.
But the president said it's going to be signed at the end of October.
Sign what kind of engagement?
So the president said negotiations will go on. So
but they're looking to sign it at the end of October, 15 days more to the end of October.
Yes. We have 2 weeks. If I say a long shot away, there are processes we have to go through. For example, this we have signed on to ECOWAS and after protocols. We may need to clear it with those protocols to see that whether it's in line with them. Parliaments may have to come in to, pass this finally. So with regards to engagement, the process is still ongoing. So businesses or the chambers have not been sidelined at all. I must say that. The other thing I want to say is that you asked about non-tariff barriers, and you asked about whether we took advantage of AGWA. The major challenge with AGWA that we couldn't take advantage of is the other means or other barriers which were there, which made it virtually impossible for us to export other product lines to the US market. And that is very key in the conversation that is being had with the Chinese. That, I mean, you can give us what we call a Trojan horse. I mean, you can give us something that would in itself at the end be our downfall. So these are our conversations, or these are all boxes that will be ticked before such an agreement will be signed. And trust me, these agreements would eventually have to come to the people's representative to scrutinize it before it comes into force. So we should be rest assured that everything will be done to protect the Ghanaian industry. And like Mr. Akwabwa said, are there other product lines that we are looking to export other new product lines. You speak about the things we export to China, and we one of them is cocoa beans, as you rightly said. But in this agreement, what we are insisting is that the zero tariff should not be on the beans, but it should be on cocoa products, so that CPC can export zero tariffs golden tree chocolates to China. So these are our conversations we are having. For example, manganese ores. We just export the ore. We should have it as we should have a platform or an arrangement where manufactured aluminum products can be sent to China, or even semi-processed, or they can be processed in a way that they can be sent to China. Right now, because of the escalating tariffs which many countries employ, where manufactured products attract higher tariffs than raw materials, it makes it a bit difficult for African countries to export manufacture. And it's not only to the Chinese market, it's only to the European market, to the other Asian markets. It's everywhere. It's a way countries protect their manufacturing industry. So what we are trying to do is to ensure that tariffs on manufactured products and tariffs on products which we have competitive advantage on are removed, so that we can manufacture and send to China.
And Frederick, very quickly though, and because I need to bring my guest in on another subject as far as China is concerned, very quickly, beyond the tariff-free agreement, this particular trip, are we expecting other bilateral deals, loans, and other, key deals done on the back of this? What else are we expecting from this trip?
I mean, this is not the only deal. I know that the president there was discussion on AI and technology transfer and other things. So like I said, when the conversation started already, the president was very clear. We are not looking at just trying to sign a deal and lose out on all the benefit that China can give us. So a lot more is happening that I don't even have all the details, but I know for sure that this is not the only deal. This is not the only reason why the president went to China.
Okay, and Prof, in that bigger context, are you aware if we have a China policy? What is our big China strategy into which all this fits in? And I asked that question because of our recent history with China. It hasn't always turned out the way we expect, even when they've pitched that they're doing us a favor by giving us butter. We're told, I remember you speaking to you many times around the $2 billion that came in. We were told it was butter. It turned out it wasn't butter after all, that we had to actually pay back what we took. Have we learned from those lessons?
I am not sure. I don't think so. Look at the power imbalance between Ghana and China and all of that. And I think that at some point, one will prefer that we'll be a bit quiet and rather focus on things that we are doing here to be able to bring our private sector, especially indigenous private sector, up and the rest of them. If you ask me what the strategy is,
what's the strategy? Do you know?
I haven't seen it.
And then the other question I'm going to ask is, because of the year on the government, what should the strategy be?
I think that because to develop a strategy, you want to map up the key stakeholders, and probably Association of Ghana Industries, Ghana Chamber, and the rest of them. And also we learn from our own history and the rest of them. The challenge, not only Ghana, in terms of the fact that we actually don't have a well-crafted strategy that allows us to engage with the rest of the world, in which case it would inform who and who we even carry along. Because if we had a strategy and we had prepared for this, and it's not necessarily the fact that it's driven by the other side, probably the president there would have been some level of consensus in terms of what do we want, what do we need to, and the rest of that. I don't think that they can do this negotiation totally independent of the Association of Ghana Industry, because sometimes they have the data, okay, and the rest of them. But of course, as I've indicated, we should also remember that China has a bigger picture and a strategy to engage Africa and the rest of the world.
And it appears we don't.
And we don't. And we are just playing along. It's not only that. If you look at China, India, you look at Russia and the rest of them, they all do. Sometimes before you wake up, remember when our former president went to China, I think somewhere 2017 or so, the kind of song they played for him. Probably they've had a folder on him and all of that. But I think that we don't have a long-term strategy that allows us to engage competitively, which also would mean that we will be doing the right things at home to enable us take advantage of all of this, because we've signed too many of some of these arrangements, free this, free that, and all of that, but we don't have the capacity to be able to take advantage of that. But for China, this thing will work well for them, because why? If you look at the new form of colonization that we talk about now, which comes largely from non-Paris Club creditors in the form of trade and debt diplomacy, right, and all of that. That's essentially the path that China is playing. You can see how India is also building on that. You can see China, even Russia, trying to also exert its influence on the continent. But I think that if you ask me, we should rather focus more in terms of building capacity to take advantage of the African continental free trade. Because if I look at intra-regional trade, and you look at the goods that Ghana exports, it even involves relatively higher value-added products compared to trade between Ghana and China, and between Ghana and the rest of the world, and the rest of them. It's simply because, apart from, as before indicated, the tariff issues can easily be eliminated. Those are low-hanging fruit. But the non-tariff issues and its enforcement usually is to our disadvantage. Because when they tell you your product is not compliant and the rest of them, remember that when it comes to standards in this country, we are not driven by standards. Yeah. Breads don't have expiring date. Eggs are perpetuities. Kenke don't have expiring date, and the rest of them. We don't even care where the water is coming from. Okay, and we are not driven by basic standards, and therefore our ability to access international market, even if they say it's zero tariff and the rest of them, is limited. Even when it comes to standardization and the rest of them, we have a challenge in mainstreaming that within private sector. Some foreign firms with presence here are able to do some of these things much better than indigenous firms and the rest of them. So the non-tariff issues and the compliance issues really discourage us, but we should be looking more within there, because the point is that there's commonality. So when it comes to certain basic items that we can easily export within the African continental trade, I think we should take advantage of that. And that is where the deficit is huge. If you are saying that you want to export manufactured goods to China, they don't have deficit. They can produce at large scale. But if you take Africa, for instance, and you pick the food value chain, in 2015, our net food import was more than $35 billion. In 2020, by the end of this year, Africa would have spent more than $115 billion importing food and food-related items. So that's a huge market for Ghana to take advantage of. So, and in fact, when I look at the 24-hour economy and all of that, I look at it within this context, that this is where we have competitive advantage within the continent. Of course, we are not going to argue who has the best right over jollof rice. But when you taste the jollof rice from Ghana, you don't need anybody to pray for you and all of that. So I think those are let's use the intra-regional to build capacity.
Do you support that point?
Scale up.
That our focus should not be on China, should focus on the African market?
I totally agree with you. I don't think that we should be overly excited by this agreement. In the immediate days or years ahead, I don't see us taking any full advantage of this agreement because we are highly disadvantaged. What are we exporting? But maybe, as Seth said, in the future, we'll have to develop products that will be acceptable.
But we also cannot do without China.
No, obviously.
So we must have some strategy in dealing with China so that we can find where we can benefit. If you were called to the table, assuming government now wants to develop that strategy in the blueprint, what would you say they should focus on?
I believe that the product that we have competitive advantage, the ones we are exporting in their raw form, I think we should begin to add value to these products because we have it. And within the value chain, we can get our cocoa, we can get our gold, we can get... Why is it that we are not adding the least value to this to be able to export? Then we'll be able to also make money out of it. In its raw form, obviously we are not going to benefit. So I'm not overly excited. I'm looking at going to the future. But in such agreement, there is always, you see a technology transfer. For me, that is what I want to see in this agreement, that in the future, or in the not too distant future, what they've been able to develop over the years, they will help us also to develop our manufacturing sector.
Frederick says that the consultations will be done.
Yes, we are looking at the African continent, and we need that technology to be able to produce and export among ourselves. So if they have done it, we don't have to reinvent the wheels. They should come on board and help us to also develop that. But in some of this agreement, beyond what we are seeing, there are other funds for rules and other things that are tied to this. So you may not have an option than to sign and get those funds to build your rules.
I believe that they will sign before they will come and consult you.
Yes. I mean, but Seth, so the consultations Frederick has assured that will be extended to yourselves. When you get to the table, what are you looking out for?
Well, I think that it will be good that we are consulted. That's important. And when we get to the table, for me, it will be more of discussing the strategies. Okay. What strategies are we adapting to be able to take advantage of the opportunity that is being created?
What strategies should we adopt?
Come again?
What strategies should we adopt?
Oh, we have to look into our own internal value chain development. Because, for example, we talk about cocoa, and everybody says we should add value to cocoa. The fact is that when you look at a typical chocolate, a bar of chocolate, the cocoa cost component is just 30%. You have to look at the sugar, you have to look at the milk, you have to look at the packaging, and several other things that makes the cocoa, the chocolate, a whole product to be sold. If you only have cocoa and you haven't developed the other chains, the other additions, you still cannot be competitive. And therefore, the strategy should be, and that's why government, I believe, has come out of the 24-hour economy and talking about value chains. If you develop it very well, we don't need to be competitive over every product. Let's select a few that we can develop the value chains, go deeper into it, such that by the time the product gets out there, we are competitive in price and in quality. That is where a big market like China becomes relevant to you. If you don't do that, they can give you zero-rated tariff. You will still not make very good use of it. So when we go to the table, we will look at what is it out of the whole range of products that we can potentially export, which of them can we quickly develop and have the value chain deepened such that we are competitive. Then we can actually benefit from it.
Seth, Mark, Prof, and Frederick, thank you very much. Wait the president's return, and I'm pretty sure we'll get further and better particulars about what really was agreed beyond just the free trade agreement with China, the tariff-free arrangement. As Mark has said, it's always some loans, infrastructure development arrangement that is tied to this. What are these? We'll learn more in the next few days. Enjoy the rest of the evening.